Welcome to the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us, where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy brown, holy brown, holy brown, holy brown.
This is a Spirit Session podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone, Katie here. This podcast is intended to inspire you, educate you, and most importantly, support you on your journey towards knowing who you really are, that inner self, that inner teacher. I am not a psychologist or a medical doctor and do not offer professional health or medical advice on this podcast. If you are suffering from any kind of psychological or medical issue, please do the right thing and seek help from your qualified health professional. Hey everyone out there in podcast land, I could not be more excited to share this podcast today with you. I was preparing for our level 2 class today and was just like, oh my God, we got to put this out there because this is the stuff that we do in the Shakti school, and it's so hard to describe it, and I think you just need a little taste of it. And so what does a little taste of Shakti school look like? You're going to get 30 minutes, the first 30 minutes of one of my favorite classes from level 2, and it's all about sex, death, the goddess Aphrodite in every woman, and really how to liberate ourselves from some of the most painful patterns in our lives, which is, how do I heal my lineage from the relationship karma of the past that's preventing me from really doing what all of our hearts really actually want, and that is to love and to be loved and to experience our pleasure and our eroticism and our sexuality and our relationality from this place of it being holy and being consecrated. And so we talk about that in this podcast. And we also talk about this other aspect to the goddess within every woman that, guess what, doesn't get a lot of press. Nobody wants to talk about. That's also equally true. And that is our propensity for war and our propensity for manipulation. And how does warfare show up in you? How does manipulation show up in you? And it might be kind of scary to look at that, but by doing that, you free yourself from it and from the suffering that it creates in ourselves and our families and our worlds that inevitably does lead to warfare. So I'm so excited to share this with you. And honestly, I hope it inspires you. If you are considering Shakti school, this is a little taste. Remember, guys, it's coming up and spots do fill. And we want you there. We really do. Level 1 starts this January 15th. We have already collected just the most amazing women from all over the planet, and we really hope that you'll be one of them. I hope you enjoy this taste of Shakti school, and I hope to see you in the classroom. Hi, guys. Welcome back. What a great time to come back, and what an amazing topic. Aphrodite, the archetypes of the feminine, and there are as many archetypes of the feminine as there are ways of being. It's like that old yogic joke that there are as many yoga poses as there are beings. So we won't get through all of them today. In fact, we're going to focus on a few, and in many cultures, these archetypes go by different names. I remember hearing one of my mentors saying that it doesn't really matter what you call them. You could call Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire for Shiva and Shakti. It doesn't really matter. There's this real embodied feeling around these things that is bypassing actually the part of our brain that labels things. It's like, you know it when you feel it. You know it when you see it. You know it when you are living it. But also maybe we don't. And so today in this class, this will be a very Shakti school experience. We are going to move out very far from what could be considered traditional Ayurveda, and we're going to go to real traditional Ayurveda, which is how it all started. Long, long, long ago in a land far away and also right here and right now, there were a group of friends, girlfriends, who were going through some shit. And they were like, girl, meet me down by the river. I got to talk to you about what's going on. And the other girl says, all right, like, I'll meet you down there. And can I bring this other friend? Sure. She shows up. She's like, y'all, I am like 9.5 months pregnant. And it is like time for this baby to leave my body. And then this other gal shows up from out of the woods. Can I join y'all? Sure, of course, we're all sisters. Y'all, I can't get pregnant. I'm really upset about this. Come on, join the circle. Another lady starts to emerge from the woods and she says, this man is driving me nuts. Like, can I tell you about my boyfriend? And they're like, sure. And, you know, we're a sex positive school, you know, another one said, let me tell you about my girlfriend. Sure, come on in. And on and on and on. Dude, these kids are driving me nuts, right? Hey, have you noticed that after the age of like 30 or 40, like things are getting dry? Like, you know, and they're like, yeah, girl, I got some stuff for you. Okay, so these women, these sisters meet down by the river and they just start to talk. And in this story, there's just this huge amount of support, humor, love, and there's two words that are not there. And that is shame and competition. There's a place where there's no competition and where every woman gets to speak her voice. And so you can imagine down by the river with these sisters, things started to shift and they started to move around their bodies and they started to share different recipes and they started to do some poses and some breath work and laughter and sharing sort of how we get through certain stages of the month via menstruation, but also stages of life via menopause and birth and death. And they really formed this sweet, sweet, connective community. And that community was called the Shakti School. Just kidding. We have tried our best to recreate it virtually on Zoom, but that community is the story of all of our sisterhoods. Wherever you find your lineage, we can trace it back to this time and place where women really did learn from one another, and they really were the keepers of two super important roles. One was sexuality and fertility and birth. And the other, you might be surprised with what I'm about to say. The other was warfare. Are you surprised? Yeah. We have this false, well, I won't say false. There's a thread of thought that loves to imagine women as being these sacred, perfect creatures. And if just the patriarch would burn to the ground, we women would just make it all good and righteous. And those of you that have some wisdom know that's not always how it turns out. There is a reason why women were the keepers of death and warfare. We're so good at warfare that we get the big dudes to do it for us. You know, there's these old stories about men going off to battle and literally like shooting each other and like beating each other up, and then coming back, sitting by the fire and having a beer, whereas a woman will throw no arrows but will hold a manipulative grudge for lifetimes. So today we're going to talk about these two forces. Down by the river where all of these women sat, there very much was representation around the 360 degrees of what it means to be connected to the goddesses. Now, of course, do biological men have this capacity? For sure, just as we all have the capacity for all the gods and goddesses. But today we're speaking about two that are extremely important if we even just begin to consider the physiology of women. And down by the river, these two really core threads started to emerge as women began to empower themselves, as they began to learn the tools and techniques of fertility, longevity, and spirituality. And so we could do a whole year around all of them, right? And we could do a whole maybe we should start a new school one day, where we really could, just go and really honor and propitiate and spend time with these different aspects of the goddess, which obviously are all aspects of you. But today we're going to focus on two core aspects that will touch into both the Mother Mary saintliness and the wifiness. Some of you like being a wife. The Mother Mary of mothering. Some of you really love the mothering. You have it. And the sacred whore, or, that word, of course, in our culture has been desecrated, just like the word witch, just like the word yogini. We have a lot of confusion around sacred prostitute, what that even means. But we can think of this less as an external act or role and more as an energetic that we carry. And so I'm sure many of you have considered or thought, and if not, what a cool thing to do today, the complexity and often confusion around both how we show up in the world as warriors and how we show up as sexual creatures. If you have ever thought, wow, I really do have a part of me that's just a wild tigress that likes to get down, that's got a little slutty side, but I also want someone to shower me in candles and rose petals and run the bath and give me the, Chris Muse style 45-minute clitoral meditation, while worshiping me as the embodiment of the goddess of all. If you've ever kind of felt a little guilty about wanting to be ravaged and taken, and this is something that we can open our eyes to and open our hearts to, this sort of freeing ourselves from the shame around the multitudinous nature of both our sexuality and the way we work and show up in the world, how we use our sacred life force, prana. The ancients called brahmacharya. Brahmacharya does not, it sometimes can mean celibacy, but the deeper tantric meaning is to walk in alignment with divinity. And it's also the wise use of all forms of energy. And two of the main ways that we utilize our energy are through our sexuality and our relationships, as well as how we show up in the world for our work, our career, our to-do list. And that doesn't mean you don't connect with that if you're a mom and you don't have a quote job, because moms are doing the job. So that is a different aspect than this other. And so there's a real value in learning how to differentiate these two things, place them in their proper home. And today you can see my face, learn how they show up in a holy, sacred,
conscious way that's mature and who you want to be, standing in integrity, and how they show up as shadow sides that we are not so aware of, or we are, but we still do it. And so these are what we could call the immature aspects. Now, I hope with all my heart that we're close enough at this point in Shakti school for you to know we are not a place of ideology, rules, or dogmas. We are a place where we offer you guys a smorgasbord of ideas, and you are honored as a sovereign creature who gets to compute, understand, and feel and embody, take what's working, leave what doesn't, and be radically honest about that. Because oftentimes the things that don't feel good are the very medicine that will take us to the next stage of our expansion. So if during class today, you're like, oh God, it doesn't feel good, that could be because that's a message that you really do on a deep level need to hear. Or it could just be like, nah, dog, right? So like you really get to kind of, I said in class last year, I'm about to throw a bunch of wet spaghetti up on the wall over there at your house, right? And we're going to see what sticks. I'm not attached to the spaghetti at all. You can take all the spaghetti off, throw it away, and never talk to us again. And I mean, we wouldn't even know, right? We don't know what you're doing with your spaghetti. But some of you are going to go, yeah, that. Some of you are going to take the whole darn lot and put it in your bag and go, this is it, right? And so that's really where we're going today. And the second thing that's super important to remember, this is the core teaching of Tantra. Neither good nor bad, simply useful or not useful. For what? I don't know. What do you want to do with your life? Do you want to free your soul? Do you want to move into more compassion and love? Do you want to know the truth of who you really are so that when you knock at the door of death, you might not be so freaked out? I don't know. That's my goal, right? Yours could be, I want a Lamborghini and a Chanel handbag. And I learned all these tools at Shakti school that made me a more vibrant, powerful woman. And I went out and got it, right? Like if you did that, write me a letter and I will frame that shit and put it on the wall because I don't care. Both are the expression of you in your divinity. So there's neither good nor bad. There's simply you and that feeling inside of this is what I want and this is what my heart deeply longs for. And I'm going to go in that direction. Because what so often happens is we feel it and we know it on that deep cave of the heart level. And then we go out in the world and we do those old patterns from both our family history and our own incarnative history. And we go in the opposite direction of what our heart truly wants. So let's talk about sex. Now that I've caveated, let's talk about these archetypes. First of all, what is an archetype? Many of you know, but let's just talk about it for a second. An archetype is an inner psychic, visceral, emotional experience. An archetype is a way of seeing reality and behaving that is both predictive, and powerful. It is both patterned and predictable. An archetype is both deeply intimate and yours and individualized, but also completely universal. Let's think of one example, the archetype of the mother, which we won't go into too much today, but we go into a lot throughout the course. The whole Shakti school is a bowing before the Divine Mother, because the archetype, the core pattern of mothering is love in action. Love in action. An archetype is a vortex of both an inner experience as well as the outer collective playing upon us. When our archetypal nature is conscious, we can use it in a way that benefits this internal longing and desire. When an archetype within us is unconscious, our culture, society, the outer world, and even our own inner unconscious realm can use us as a mere puppet for the archetype. I don't know about you, but I don't want that second option. And I've definitely been it. Well, if you want to know more about this, go watch the documentary on Marilyn Monroe on Netflix. Some of you may have seen it. And celebrities really are the most unlucky people in the world because the archetypes are pushed upon them. There's another, you can tell I do a lot of Netflixing. There's an amazing documentary on archetype. It's called Beckham. David Beckham. Who would have thought David Beckham could be so interesting and so complex and yet became just the complete archetype for an entire nation for years. And that archetype was the whipping boy, a place for the collective to put what is unwanted within oneself, unseen, unvalued, unhonored. So in Ayurvedic medicine, a huge part of Ayurveda is being aware of what archetypes are pulling upon you. They call this graha. And, they speak a lot about the planets. Where's your Saturn? Where's your Venus? What's your star chart at birth? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these planets are archetypal forces that are moving you about as a puppet, doing their will, right? And how do we become Jyotish, right? The light. How do we bring light to this phenomenon of the neuroastrology that's affecting us? And the answer is that we have a relationship with these gods and goddesses, with these archetypal forces. And so we might propitiate Saturn. If we have a lot, some of you are in your Saturn right now, right? And I am ending my Saturn very soon. Hoo-hoo, right? The period of Saturn, he is known as like the Undertaker, right? It's like discipline. You cannot go off balance even to the left or the right. You have to stay the course. And so if I'm unconscious, it can feel like the worst time of your life. But if we are conscious and we propitiate Saturn, Saturn gives us his boons, his gifts, which is yogic awareness, non-attachment, enlightenment, freedom. So the key word when we are going into these two forces of both sexuality and warfare is that we are not attempting to get rid of them. We are not attempting to demonize them. If we do that, they will always win, and they'll come back with a vengeance. The gods do not like to be ignored. If you ignore them, they'll show up even more, right? We all know these horrible stories of groups of people that deny their primal sexuality, and it shows up in perverted ways. Right? We all know people that deny their anger, and it shows up in unseemly ways. So today we're going to be honoring these forces, and we're going to do one deeply important and potentially super healing thing today, which is we are going to bring them into the place that a god loves to live, and that is the temple. So let's talk about, I'm going to share the screen, some of these two forces. I'm going to share this, and then I'll share a few other images. Can you guys see this? Y'all are just seeing Marilyn Monroe, right? You're not seeing my whole screen. I'm going to show you an image of the famous Aphrodite in a moment. We could also talk about Lakshmi. Why aren't we talking about Lakshmi? Well, because you've probably heard a lot about her, and Aphrodite is getting kind of angry. Nobody's talking about her. So really, they're the same force. And so we can see this image of our beautiful and much beloved Marilyn, great tortured soul, who in fact is a very bright, intelligent, deeply feeling, thinking woman. It has been shown that she was incredibly interested in yoga and tantra. She had yoga poses all over her walls. She was very interested in the same spiritual practices you are interested in. Horrible childhood, lots of abuse, particularly from her father. And, you know, this part of Aphrodite, we could really think of as the shadow side. I'm sure Marilyn, of course, had her brightness and her light, but our culture very much destroyed her. And one could say perhaps she destroyed herself in becoming less Marilyn as an individual and more the archetype. And then we have, of course, the famous Botticelli's Birth of Venus. And Venus is another name for her. This is a very, very inspirational piece of art, because those of you that are from the yoga tradition can perhaps see some of the many, many similarities with Lakshmi. Whenever we see these archetypes coming through in very similar ways, despite time and geography, we know, as Joseph Campbell encouraged us to understand, and I believe this is a way that we can stop this senseless warfare we do upon one another. These archetypes are not cultural, they're biological. They emerge out of the human body. They emerge out of the chakras. So we see, just as we see with Lakshmi, a force that's coming out of the ocean, a force that's sitting on an open shell, often the symbol of female sexuality, the ocean, a symbol of the unconscious realm, and the churning of the ocean in both of the stories of how they came about, this movement, this falling in love, this chaos that produces something of incredible beauty, gentleness, sensuality, and one could even say on the highest level, erotic love. Take a moment to just consider this force in you and how maybe these images affect you. We'll come back to our beautiful Lakshmi, Venus, Aphrodite in a moment. So remember, we're at the party, right? We're gonna talk to two of the goddesses today. One is Aphrodite. Who's the other one? This warfare woman. And notice already, if you're like, Katie, I really like Aphrodite, I don't like the warfare goddess. Just notice how you're already choosing sides, maybe, or you really like the warfare one, and that Marilyn Monroe image just threw you. Ew, look at that dyed hair, you know? I have a almost identical star chart, by the way, to Marilyn and Dolly Parton. And it's like we have to have bleached hair. It's just in our stars, right? So I do understand being captured by these goddesses. Some of you, like me, it's just, oh, the Marilyn, sure, right? Others of you find it repulsive. You know, you can watch these old interviews with Dolly Parton. If you really want to see the highest level of Aphrodite, watch the Dolly Parton interview. I think it was in the 1970s with Barbara Walters or one of these women. We'll Google it during the break, but watch and you'll see the way she shapeshifts and she uses the veil of Aphrodite to actually preach wisdom. That's a side note. So who's this other star of our show this afternoon? Well, of course, it's Durga, right? It's Athena. here she is over here on the right. I chose this image because it really does have a lot of the symbology that we also see, even to the trident, right? The owl, the shield with the face of the tiger or the lion. These are all complete Durga images. And yet here we see it coming through in the more Greco tradition. And so here she is, right? Now, Marilyn is in a backbend. Marilyn is in an ecstatic, take me, darling. Rapture. The feminine wants to be, in this emanation, she wants to be soft and wants to be taken and wants to be open and empty in a way. There is a quality in Aphrodite and Marilyn here of waiting, of receiving and hoping. When I say that, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years of women who live in your bones wake up, because how many women have longed and waited on their beloved? That's her. Athena ain't waiting on you. Athena is there. She's got her shield, she's got her sword, she's got her spear, and she's got her bro, which is her owl, which is the symbol of highest intellect. So she's freaking powerful and she's super smart. And there's nothing about this image. I mean, look at her face. Like, there's nothing in this image that conveys, oh, darling, I'm just laying here pouting in my panties on my fainting couch waiting on you, right? She's out there with you. She's fighting the battle beside you. Athena is our mother goddess of warfare. And I love this. And I get chill bumps because all of us are tired of being told what a woman is supposed to be like. That is the most ridiculous idea in the world, because we are 360 degrees of goddess. Some days you are Aphrodite, and some days you can be Athena. The deep inquiry that we'll go into today is, what do these aspects of us look like when they're in their conscious, matured form, when they're in their form of integrity? I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to throw some ideas out. You're going to make that decision. Like, what does this look like for me? And for every woman, it'll be different. And then what does it look like when she's in the shadows? We can go back to this idea of Aphrodite and Athena, but especially Aphrodite, in the way that Aphrodite has been kicked out of the holy realm. Aphrodite has been kicked out of the temple. What does that mean? It means there was a time, as we've said before in Shakti school, where two things were allowed to exist and coexist together. And that is sacred spirituality and sacred sexuality. Sex and spirit were allowed to coexist, just as spirit and medicine were allowed to coexist. In fact, they were seen as inextricably linked. Same with our sexuality.
Okay, so that was a little taste of our Shakti school. If you want to attend the full class, you'll need to join us. And as I said before, we start in January 15th. If you want to have a call with someone to talk about it, we're going to provide the link to our coaches down below. And I hope to see you there to talk about all things sex, God, and illumination in 2025. A big special thanks to Kevin Carlisle of Goodbye Gemini, who wrote this beautiful podcast music, and to DJ Juan Pablo Jimenez in southern Spain for mixing it and making it magic.